We are very excited to see Justin Herbert in his new offense. But, David, has the Kellen Moore hype train gone too far?
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer. We've been covering the Chargers together now for 7 seasons, but this is our 5th season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen, and as always, and to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and also listen to the show wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Today we are doing a mailbag show, so that means we are taking the show directly to you and your questions. And we're going to start things off with, is there too much hype around the Kellen Moore hire? And would the Chargers be able to avoid a slow start with them having to learn a new offense? And what is more likely, Justin Herbert earning MVP or Quentin Johnston Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think that one has a pretty definitive answer, but I do want to start with a great question that we got from a very frequent question asker, definite everydayer, Louis Benjamin, who asked, were we this high on Joe Lombardi a couple of years ago? I feel like we were, and it's a great question because I think you're always inclined to be excited about the new hire. You always want things to, you want to believe the best in things, and the Chargers are making the right decisions, even if you're questionable, of the decisions they end up making. But I don't think that the hype has gone too far around Kellen Moore, but I also think, David, that I am much more excited this time around. Maybe last time we thought we talked ourselves into, Joe Lombardi being Sean Payton, right? And just wanted to hope for the best, wanted to write off what happened in Detroit. But, to me, there's much more hype surrounding Kellen Moore than there was with Joe Lombardi.
Yeah, for sure. I think it is very true that I think we talked ourselves into thinking that it was a good hire with Joe Lombardi. I thought, we were just like, okay, this is who they went with. We're going to find reasons to be excited. But I think when you look at Joe Lombardi, especially, with his first stint as an offensive coordinator with the Detroit Lions, things did not go well. And remember, that was his team ranking 30th in points per game. And he had Matthew Stafford at quarterback. And by the way, he had Calvin Johnson, Hall of Fame wide receiver. Yeah. Also had Golden Tate and Eric Ebron. And they did not produce very well at all. So red flag number one, very, very bright, did not do well as his first stint as an offensive coordinator. And then number two, Daniel, is this was not Brandon Staley's first choice as offensive coordinator. This is more like his third choice, and it kind of feels like a little bit, especially with the benefit of hindsight, that the Chargers might have settled a little bit for Joe Lombardi in that moment.
They did, because he was not their first choice, right? They tried to go after Mike McDaniel, who was with San Francisco at the time, is now the Dolphins head coach, and he got blocked. And they tried to go for Kevin O'Connell, who's the new Vikings coach as of last year, and he got blocked as well. I mean, both of those guys were way higher on the list of guys that we would have went after, but there was a connection between Brandon Staley and Joe Lombardi, and you don't want guys just hiring their friends, obviously, but I do think that, credit where credit's due. He also had to fire his mentor, right? He had to fire his former college coach when he got rid of Joe Lombardi, and did what he had to do. You weren't going to fire him after 2021 when the offense was really, really good.
Yeah.
It underperformed, and he made a change, but I just think this is totally different because you have a bigger sample size with Kellen Moore actually being an offensive coordinator, right? He was top 5 offensive coordinator in Dallas in his 4 years there.
Yeah.
But also the fact is, Kellen Moore did it under Jason Garrett and also did it under Mike McCarthy and had top 5 offenses under both of those head coaches, right? Both who have, offensive backgrounds for sure. And neither one of those guys I really truly respect as an offensive genius. So maybe somewhat in spite of those guys, right? Sure. Not only did he do it with Dak, right? He did it with Cooper Rush. So, we've just seen him time and time again have to adapt to different wide receiving cores because, Amari Cooper gets traded in different offensive lines because the offensive line was super banged up for some of those games. So, that's what I think makes me think that we're not overselling the Kellen Moore hire. But the other part of it is, David, is I think it's also Kellen Moore in conjunction with other things. It's Kellen Moore in conjunction with getting Rashawn Slater back. It's Kellen Moore in conjunction, right, with adding Quentin Johnston and having an offensive line you feel really good about. Getting Dylan Guyton back in the fold, more speed in general. So, I think it's all of those things coming together, but I don't feel like we've overhyped it too much.
No, not at all. I mean, I think there's legitimate reasons to be excited about the Kellen Moore hire. And I think the first and foremost point is track record of success. Like, I mean, like you mentioned, like he has done it at a high level and there's tangible results. And it's not just him being a great offensive coordinator throwing the football. He also ran the ball at an extremely high level. And also, one thing about the red zone, the Chargers were really bad. They were 18th in red zone scoring percentage. Dallas was number 1 in red zone touchdown scoring percentage. So a lot of the things that the Chargers had trouble with, Kellen Moore has tangible results that indicate that he can replicate that type of success. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be very excited about Kellen Moore being the Chargers offensive coordinator and getting to pair up with Justin Herbert, who is the most talented quarterback that he's got to be the one that running his offense.
Paired up with, yeah, for sure. I mean, it is, and that's with Dak, right? I mean, that's saying something, and that's just how good Justin Herbert has been over his first 3 seasons. But I think the other thing about that is this. Joe Lombardi was never calling plays for the New Orleans Saints, right? Like the only time that we saw him calling plays was under Jim Caldwell in Detroit, and it was a disaster.
Yes.
We might have tried to sweep that on the rug a little bit, maybe just try to, explain it away. I mean, I don't know. I remember Joe Lombardi wasn't near the top of my list as far as
I think we were pretty
minds.
Lukewarm about it, honestly, if my memory serves.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure we probably found a way to get ourselves excited about it. But I just think it's in a different level, with Kellen Moore, especially with the recent piece. I think it was Lindsey Theory that put that out. Who was that? Yeah, that put that. Or no, Albert Breer, Bleacher Report.
Yeah.
Just put out a great piece about Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley and the unlikely pairing and all.
And how that relationship got started, and
how it started,
really organic.
Totally. Like these dudes get it on a different level, know, and the Chargers moved quickly to make this happen. He was their absolute first option for this, for sure.
Let's not forget that Kellen Moore was not a guy that anybody was expecting to be available. Like, it's not like, they fired Kellen Moore. It was kind of more like they had some different offensive philosophies and they kind of mutually agreed to part ways. And I mean, that might be corporate speak, there
were some mumblings, there were rumblings out there, but it's not like this dude got bounced out in the first round of the playoffs either, right? Yeah, it ended poorly for them, but they absolutely demolished the team they played in the first round and then got beat, with the Ezekiel Elliott weirdo play at the end of the game. I mean, I don't know. I believe in Kellen Moore. I think him combined really with what the Chargers, have going for them already offensively. Yeah. I mean, I think this is a match made in heaven and something that doesn't come along very often. You don't get top 5 offensive coordinators who are
they don't just fall out of the sky.
Well, another thing is, too, is he's always been the one calling the plays. Right. Yeah. Like it's always been really his offense, maybe with some adjustments and things like that. But it's always
just
been
love his adaptability, man. It's just ability to really figure things out under pressure. Like it's fantastic, and I can't wait to see that translate to the Chargers.
Yeah, when we talked before about not just red zone scoring, but third quarter scoring, being able to make the adjustments, all of those things. So let's get to POG here really quick, who asked, considering Mike McCarthy's quotes on Kellen Moore leaving Dallas, said the defense needs to rest more. I've maintained that playing with the lead is the best thing for Staley's type of defense. Thoughts on the risk reward for the Bulls defense that was already on the field too much? Maybe on the field too much. To me, I'm thinking about the offense first. Give me a guy who can go and score points as long as it's not like Chip Kelly, and then I'll worry about the other part later.
Yeah, I mean, hey, this is an offensive coordinator that wants to run up the scoreboard, okay? He wants to light it up. He wants there to be a gigantic gap, and I'm all for that. And, of course, every single defense is better when you are playing with a lead because then you take away the running game, which has been the biggest Achilles heel for the Chargers defense. So if that threat goes away, they're much better at defending the pass. And so, you would be leaning to their strengths.
Yeah, and I mean, he also said, Mike McCarthy, that he didn't like Kellen Moore running up the score on people. And it's like, okay, if you're the Chargers, you need to run up the score and put teams away every single time because you've learned that you can't trust it, without that. But I also think that 3 and outs were not a big problem for the Dallas Cowboys, right? If that was super high, I mean, you would probably say, okay, maybe you're tying your defense up. But the Chargers played better with tempo last year. They just didn't use it enough. So that's one of the parts of the game I'm looking forward to more, not worried about a defense that struggled even, when they weren't on the field too much. And Joe Lombardi's offense went 3 and out a lot, especially in the second half last year. But I think it is worthy of a question of whether this offense could start slow because of the new offense. And we're also going to get into Justin Herbert and if he will win MVP or if it's more likely that Quentin Johnston can win Rookie of the Year coming up right after this. I do need to tell you guys first about FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Chargers podcast. Baseball is in full swing, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to join today. As long as you're not betting anything regarding the Padres, you are going to give yourself a good chance. But they have a ton of parlays that you can do with FanDuel, a lot of great ways that they're already building up good bets for you guys to pick and just having entertaining ways and good promotions going on all the time. Like Shohei Ohtani winning AL Cy Young and the MVP award, and it's always fast and easy to use on a safe and secure app that pays you instantly. So don't miss out on your chance to snag that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official betting sponsor of Major League Baseball. Continuing this Chargers mailbag, I mean, we had so many great questions that we have to open up things a little bit, and we have some more questions that we're going to have to get into on tomorrow's show because you guys really showed out. Thank you to everyone who hit us up at Locked On LAC for giving us your questions today and for calling into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. You leave a 30-second voicemail, there's a good chance you can be next to a tier who has our first question, and he's asking and kind of predicting something that could happen in week 1 with the Chargers potentially starting slow because they have a new offensive coordinator.
Dan, David, this is it here. Love you, my boy. Mr. Wade. The headline for Sunday, week 1, offense struggle, defense close out the game, both survive 24-20 versus the Dolphins. Do you think I'm crazy? Because we don't play in a preseason game. Please, let me know.
It's here. I mean, there's been times I thought you were crazy, but like that doesn't surprise me a ton. I mean, obviously, I think you started with, hey, the Chargers put up one of their best defensive performances last year against the Miami Dolphins and put an end to the Tua versus Justin Herbert debate, right? Almost single-handedly with that game. Seemingly, right? It's not that simple, but it felt like it in that moment for sure.
Wasn't he like 3 for 21 at halftime or something like that?
Yeah, I know for sure he was like 3 for 15, 3 for 18. It was a really, really bad game, but I do think that this is kind of symbolic of a bigger question, which is just, could the Chargers offense start slow because they have a brand new offense? And also, as a tier rightfully points out, you're not going to see Justin Herbert in the preseason. Like maybe, no, there's no way. I mean, if you didn't do it the first year with Joe Lombardi, you're not going to do it, in year 4 with Kellen Moore. So like, I just think that there's no chance. I mean, maybe, had you seen Justin Herbert and the shoulder injury, right, take a little longer if he couldn't throw. But as of right now, it looks like he's ramping up for a very full training camp where he should get everything he needs. And he's also Justin freaking Herbert. I saw the dude come in 10 minutes before a game started, and they told him he was starting
and
after
went
giving
crazy.
Tyrod Taylor all the first team reps because Justin Herbert was a backup for a reason. And then he took, Patrick Mahomes, the reigning MVP, and
to the absolute limit.
To the limit. And I mean, Anthony Lynn probably lost in that game when he didn't go
Sure
for it
did.
in 4th and 1 in overtime. Too many.
Yep.
Yeah, so but the thing is too, not everyone's Justin Herbert, right? Like that's another big part of it. But I do think kind of the defensive talk we were talking about before, David, kind of kicks in here too. That there's no continuity, right?
Yeah.
Maybe one new starter on offense. It's basically Quentin Johnston, and that's it.
Yeah.
So like I do think even though it's a new offense, you have a lot of the same guys who know what they do well. You have the chemistry between Justin Herbert and all the non-Quentin Johnston, Darius Davis receivers. I think that helps a lot.
And that was going to be one of the big points that I was going to bring up is that you have a lot of the guys that have been in this offensive system. And, things are going to change a little bit. But Kellen Moore is going to keep a lot of those things that worked last year. And then he's going to just infuse and introduce some of those concepts from Dallas that he also had some success with. And also, let's not forget, Justin Herbert's done this a lot. He has switched offenses and switched offensive coordinators almost every single year, except for the last 2 years that he has
7 or 8 since his first year in college. Right?
Yes, exactly.
Like,
so
crazy.
He has a lot of experience learning new offenses, and let's not forget as well, this is an academic Heisman, so he's incredibly intelligent. I'm not really worried about his ability to pick up the offense. I think he and Kellen Moore will be humming from the start.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes deeper than that, right? Because not everyone's Justin Herbert, like I was saying.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to hope that the offensive line, while they're trying to create their own chemistry, are also getting this new verbiage down, right?
Sure.
Figuring everything out from a schematic standpoint.
Yeah.
Got to know that the receivers know where they're going. Like Austin Eckler talked about in his last press conference. Like, I think this is like the 4th different way I've learned to call the same route that I'm running, right? Just because the things have been changed up so many times. But like, I think it's fair. Like, yeah, this offense could take a little bit. I think there could be some signs early on. I'm not too worried about it, and I'm excited for the difference, and I think it weighs everything else. But I also hope that Brandon Staley doesn't think he's going to get away with necessarily the same game plan against Miami this time, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's got to know that. He's got to switch it up a little bit.
You have to hope so. But obviously, that game plan was pretty good. So hopefully
it was pretty immaculate. Yes,
Let's get to Colby Talbert, another everydayer, frequent question asker, good question asker, which is important as well, right? Is it more likely that Justin Herbert wins MVP or Quentin Johnston wins Offensive Rookie of the Year? David, you go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This might surprise a few people, but I feel like the Rookie of the Year award is going to be a little bit more difficult for Quentin Johnston to achieve, just because of the competitive individual nature of that award. And I think Justin Herbert has a lot and a deep bag of weapons at his disposal. He has what looks to be a very young and very dominant offensive line, and he has an offensive coordinator now that should put him in a lot of positions to push the ball down the football field. So I feel like this is kind of the perfect storm for Justin Herbert to potentially unseat Patrick Mahomes and be your NFL MVP.
Well, and I mean, you don't even have to predict him to be MVP, right? It's just about which one's more likely, and I think it's pretty easy that the most likely outcome is Justin Herbert MVP, and I honestly don't think it's that close, and I'll tell you why. We know Justin Herbert's great.
Yes.
We know the dude's elite already. We don't know what Quentin Johnston is at this point, and he's going to be compared, against all the other rookies, so in that aspect, he, obviously that helps him, but at the same time, Justin Herbert is playing the position that is more likely to win both of those awards, right?
Exactly.
MVP and Offensive Rookie of the Year. If Bryce Young goes out and has a good season, like that's going to pretty much nuke anything that Quentin Johnston does
100%. Yeah,
right. Just like Justin Herbert when he won MVP,
did to Justin
Jefferson had 1,400 freaking yards. Like that's
big time season
for a rookie,
for any receiver, rookie or not.
Historic rookie season. Either way. For either of these guys to win the award, it's probably going to have to be something close to a historic season, right?
Yeah.
But Justin Herbert, especially because he has to unseat not just Patrick Mahomes, but also Josh Allen. Also Joe Burrow. Also
Aaron Rodgers.
Jalen Hurts. Ever heard of him? That dude's playing on a freaking juggernaut of a team, too.
Yeah,
so
stacked. Yeah.
Still, though, Justin Herbert, to me, undoubtedly a top 5 quarterback. I think after that, you get, gets a little fuzzier to me. He's at lowest 4. But that's just, my opinion on it.
I agree with you,
That
honestly.
puts him very, very close to the best quarterback in the league, which makes you very, very close to the most prestigious honor besides the Super Bowl trophy, which is an MVP award. I mean, that is, to me, he's the closest. But I do want to get to a quick one here from Guidebook Beats, who asks, how many yards will Quentin Johnston have his first game played? This is kind of a double-sided question because you don't know how much he's going to play. You don't know how many targets he's going to get. You don't know if he'll have one wide receiver 3 at this point in training camp. What's your final line prediction doing this? Obviously way too early.
Yeah, obviously extremely early. But honestly, I think they're going to try to get him involved a little bit. I think they want to get his feet wet. I don't think they want to get him the ball early. I'm not going to say it's going to be a huge performance, but I'm going to go with 4 catches for 64 yards in his first game. I think he's going to do a lot of those yards after catch magic that he brings to the table. But I think that's what the stat line is going to look like for me.
That's wild because we didn't talk about it, and I had 4 catches for 68 yards. So I'm going to change mine and say 2 catches for 36 yards. How about that?
Just to be different.
Well, like the thing is like I don't want to set crazy expectations on that kid. I mean, you do that, you're already talking about the dude putting up a borderline 1,000-yard season, right? If you're pacing out 68, 64 yards over 17
I just don't
games.
see it. I don't see it as out of the question. I just feel like that's a very legitimate stat line.
But we're predicting it, right? Like that's the thing. And obviously, I predicted pretty much the same thing as you. But I think the important thing to remember is like Mike Williams had 10 catches his rookie season.
You're right.
0 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So like. And didn't even average 10 yards a catch, and we all know now how much of a big play receiver he is. So
I think it's different
now. I think you can see already that Quentin Johnston has some things that he's bringing to this table that
he's a dude.
Not only the Chargers don't have, but just not a lot of dudes that size move like that and carry that kind of explosiveness with them. Like the dude,
exactly.
Like you don't know until you see them on a field with an NFL player. Once you see, oh shoot. He still looks way more athletic than everyone, and he's on a field full of NFL players. That's
now he looks like he belongs.
Start to look different. But we do have more great questions to get into, including Dalvin Cook. Anyone? Another running back for this a little bit uncertain running back room. we're going to talk about that. And also if we would consider trading Jalen Guyton if it meant the Chargers kept one special undrafted free agent. We're going to get into that coming up right after this. All right, well, thank you guys to everyone who contributed to this fan mail show, this Chargers mailbag show, and we can't wait to go back-to-back because we will be back tomorrow. Since we had to push today's episode back, you guys get back-to-back shows this week, so that's the, silver linings right there that you get. So tomorrow we will be back with you guys with a couple more great questions, including, has the Chargers culture really changed under Brandon Staley? And also, who will be the best cornerback for this team? Because, David, I can tell you, I think you can make a case for each of Asante Samuel Jr., Michael Davis, and even J.C. Jackson.
That's
with
a
the
tough
way
question.
he's looking right now. So make sure you guys are back here tomorrow for that because Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. But let's get back to these questions that we have because we got a lot of good ones. And we have a two-parter here from Arrogant. I'm not allowed to say the other name on this show. So we'll just say Arrogant, who asks, here's a question. Well, two, are we good with the running back room that we have? Or do we need to add someone like Dalvin Cook? I know that we all want Spiller to have a breakout year, but do you guys think he will? Talked a lot about Spiller and, his opportunities this year. Let's focus on the Dalvin Cook part of it because kind of like DeAndre Hopkins a little bit, right? You don't usually see guys who have this pedigree that are just floating around out there in free agency, especially in June. That just doesn't happen. You don't see it a lot. Obviously, Dalvin Cook is a heck of a player. Could he be regressing? Was he in the first year of a new offense? There's a lot of factors that go into it. But what do you think, David, about the Chargers room and potentially adding someone like him?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Dalvin Cook is a great player. I think that he is definitely one of the special players in this league, and he's done it over a long period of time. With that being said, special players want special amounts of money, and I don't think the Chargers have the amount of money that it would require to bring Dalvin Cook in. Also, I think you have to know what you have in Isaiah Spiller. I think you have to figure that out this year. So I don't feel like this is a situation to where you can introduce Dalvin Cook because he doesn't change the future narrative of this position. Austin Eckler is a free agent at the end of the year. Josh Kelly, same thing. Isaiah Spiller, you need to know what you have in him because he could be the future of your position. And if he's not, then you need to start figuring out who could be the answer to that question. But with the salary cap issues that the Chargers are going to run into next year, they kind of really need Isaiah Spiller to be that guy because they don't really have the space to be able to make any other type of moves like that.
I think that you're right as far as the Chargers probably aren't going to have the money to do it because when you have someone like this, as much as everyone says they want to go to a good situation, I mean, for someone like him about to get really a second contract, like he doesn't have that luxury. He's going to take as much money as he can get, right? And the Chargers, if they're in a bidding war, you're not going to do that. If you can add Dalvin, so there's a couple of things. So like the advanced stats tell you that Dalvin Cook is regressing, and there could be many different reasons behind it. He has had multiple surgeries. We've seen other running backs fall off a cliff. Even younger than he is, right? But between him and Ezekiel Elliott, who's still only 27 years old, it's a tricky position. And you don't want to buy in, on something that is going to break down. You don't want to buy a car, right, after hey, it's going to blow a head gasket. In 6 months.
Right,
like,
of course.
Of course. But, like, at the same time, everything has a price, right? If you're telling me that Dalvin Cook's going to come in on the veterans minimum, of course. You do not let Isaiah Spiller stop you from going and getting Dalvin Cook if money's not an issue. Of course, and
closer and closer we get to the season, the cheaper and cheaper and cheaper that contract is going to become.
Sure, and I get the people saying he regressed, but I'm pretty sure he had 270+ yard touchdowns last year, and there's only a very, very small handful of guys that can take something to the house like that, right?
I mean, Austin Eckler did it once.
You can't, and that's not a a very likely occurrence with, not a reoccurring occurrence, at least, with Austin Eckler. That's not really his game. He doesn't have that breakaway speed most of the time, or have that kind of space more than likely. But either way, so I think with Dalvin Cook, it's tough. If price wasn't an issue, I'd still will be willing to take a chance on him because of how much we've talked about this. This is the year. Things are changing, getting much more difficult after this year. They can't give him a multi-year contract because they're $60 million over the cap next year. So that's why it's not like a future thing. You're not.
I mean, hey, if he takes $4 or $5 million, then yeah, fine. I mean, I'd say definitely give him the shot because I feel like he could make a difference in that room for sure.
But the other thing's probably playing time too, right? There's probably going to be a situation where they're going to give him more of a lion's share of the load, even if it's not, just being.
And this is going to be a passing offense too. Let's not forget about that.
Well, and I mean, he can catch passes too, but it's a dude that 1,100 yards. 4.4 yards per carry, right, and 10 total touchdowns. So, like, he played well behind a bad offensive line at times, behind new offensive scheme. Who knows? But I don't know if I would want to be the team to take the risk on it, knowing what the price is going to be. Let's get to Paul Chaburri who is asking, would you consider trading Jalen Guyton if Pokey Wilson, the Chargers' undrafted free agent receiver, continues to shine? I just don't see us being able to stash him if he plays really well. So, interesting question. I think it starts with Jalen Guyton's not going to have any trade value, right? Like, if he has done so good that he has somehow amassed trade value by the time the trade deadline rolls around, he's probably too indispensable for your team, right? Like as of right. So, obviously, if you're that far in the season, you'd already have to make the decision on Pokey Wilson. So
I think they're asking, would you trade him before the 53? Like if
that's what I'm saying though. Is like at this point, if you're keeping Pokey Wilson around, you would have had to already make that decision on the 53-man roster.
Yeah.
So I get that's not what they're saying, but at the same time, Jalen Guyton was sitting on the streets and no team signed him.
Exactly.
So we already know what the market is for him. Pokey Wilson though, as far as him making the team, if that's really the question here. It's hard because, Jalen Guyton brings 4.3 speed, This is a dude who ran a 4.6. He has a 1.91 RAS score, which you guys know just hurts me down in my core. But at the same time, a good player is a good player, right? So it does make it tough.
It makes it tough, and also considering the very rich history of undrafted free agents that the Chargers have, it's definitely a place where it could happen. And I think the Chargers have shown that if you're a baller and if you go out there and make plays, they will find a spot for you. So I think that is something you look at. But also I think just Jalen Guyton, like you said, he brings one particular skill set to the table that, nobody outside of Darius Davis is going to bring you. But also it's just his combination of size and speed. So if Jalen Guyton comes back healthy and he retains that speed, that calling card, I find it very difficult for anyone to be able to unseat him and his roster spot.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what he looks like, right? We'll see what kind of training.
Health is going to be
feels like it's
biggest
his
thing
to lose. I mean, wide receiver feels like the hardest position to make this roster.
Yeah, definitely.
I may be running, maybe quarterback, just because it's like you already spent a pick on Max Duggan, so you're probably not going to put the chance out there that another team swoops him up as their third quarterback, which they probably would. Yeah, man. I mean, it's tough. I think Pokey Wilson, obviously, from the very limited amount that we've seen, seems like he's going to be a very fun preseason player.
Sure.
And if that dude has to be your practice squad stash and you get away with it, I think you like him more than potentially guys that you had to bring up in an emergency situation last year, like a Michael Bandy.
Sure.
Right?
Let's see him with the pads on before we make any other judgments.
Like a Jason Moore, like a John Hightower, right? These are all dudes we were trying to rally around last year when the Chargers were decimated. Maybe he can be an improvement on those guys, but hopefully, by God, we don't get to that chance. The Chargers have 4 receivers who are going to see a lion's share of the load anyways, even if Pokey Wilson makes the team. Unless injuries, totally pile up, you're probably not going to see him out there anyways. But if he's a good player, obviously you hope that you can stash him. So let's get out of here on this. We have one more voicemail we want to get to just because it's so freaking nice. If you send us one that's nice, maybe you get on the show.
Hey, Dan. David. Weston here from Minnesota. And I don't really have a question for you today, but I just kind of wanted to give you guys a thanks for always putting in so much hard work and making these shows, and they're always really awesome. And I've been listening for a little over a year now, and you guys have really helped me get my football knowledge up and my Chargers knowledge up, and I always have a blast and look forward to the daily episodes. And really hope you guys enjoy the time off. You guys have earned it for all your hard work. Enjoy those Tuesdays and Thursdays. And as the tier always says, we love you guys, and just thanks from all of us for putting in the hard work. Bolt up.
The other thing that's probably always going to get you on the show is quote a tier, because the next thing, besides a tier getting his own voice on the show is, saying what a tier says, because he's one of our favorites. Weston, every day you're out there. You are always contributing. We appreciate you so much,
Thank
even
you,
for the
Weston.
voicemails that don't get on. And I think the other part of going down to 3 shows a week is part of it's content driven, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't want to be here just doing top 5 lists of everything.
Right.
You know, like it's what we hate the most. Like we want to make sure we're bringing you fresh content every day.
Yes.
It becomes a lot harder when the players aren't seen by anyone in a month, right? So
Right.
like, I think the 3 days does help us, really get the most out of every little, get the most out of every show.
we're trying to
and
bring you the
really
best.
bring fresh content
Yeah.
to every show. But thank you guys, everyone, again,
Thank
who
you.
contributed to today's show. We have big guys we're talking about tomorrow. We have questions from super fan Zach tomorrow about the cornerback spot and who could be number one. We got questions about Brandon Staley and if he's really changed the culture and much more. But to make sure you guys don't miss it, go and subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and follow the show wherever you get your podcast from. You can find us as well as every day on all of our social media. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports and David Drugmeyer on Twitter at DroTalkSD, as well as the show's page at Locked On LAC. You can also find us on our Instagram at Locked On Chargers and also on our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. Thank you to everyone who checked us out again, and especially those who called in the voicemail line. For those who missed it, the number again is 323-524-7924. If you make a 30-second voicemail, it's likely to get on the show. But we'll be back with you guys tomorrow. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.